Welcome to Boring History for a Relaxing Channel. Tonight we step into the wet, smoky, soap-scented world of Victorian laundresses, where the clothes of the rich arrive in heavy bundles and leave looking impossibly pure, as if no human hand has ever sweated over them. You stand in the grey morning air beside a washhouse door, with fog on the window glass, coal smoke in your throat, and a mountain of linen waiting like a pale, damp hill. Somewhere, a wealthy lady expects her sheets to return white as virtue, which is convenient, because virtue itself does not require boiling, wringing, starching, and carrying upstairs. You probably won't survive this with your hands uncracked, your back unbent, or your lungs entirely grateful. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while the first tub fills, post where you're watching from and your local time, now. Dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You begin on what many working laundresses know as washing day, often Monday because Sunday clothes, household linens, tablecloths, napkins, shifts, shirts, nightgowns, stockings, collars, and towels have gathered all week in quiet little heaps of human evidence. The rich do not usually call it evidence, naturally. They call it laundry, which sounds much tidier. The bundle arrives tied in cloth or packed into a wicker basket, and when you loosen it, the week opens in layers. There is the faint violet water from a lady's dressing table, the sourness of sweat from a gentleman's shirt, candle grease, soot from city air, gravy shadows on napkins, and the particular stale sleepiness of bed linen that has been shut away too long. You're not shocked. You're not even especially impressed. This is your weather. The room is already damp, though the real labour has barely started. Brick walls drink in moisture. The floor may be stone, worn smooth by feet and puddles. A copper boiler sits waiting like a squat metal beast. Wooden tubs stand in a row, some for soaking, some for rinsing, some for the serious business of turning dirty cloth into a symbol of social order. In the Victorian world, clean linen matters deeply. A white shirt collar can speak for a man's respectability. Bright table linen can whisper that a household is orderly, moral, and comfortably above panic. A rich family's sheets are not just sheets. They are announcements. The first mainstream historical fact sits right there in the basket. Laundry is usually one of the hardest and most time-consuming forms of household labour in the 19th century. Before electric washing machines, before easy hot water, before cheerful bottles promising mountain freshness, cleaning clothes depends on heat, water, soap, muscle, and patience. Mostly muscle. Lots of patience. Possibly too much patience. You lift the first sheet and it drags from the pile like a tired sail. Dry. It is manageable, damp or soaked. It becomes a creature with opinions. You sort by colour, by fabric, by degree of filth, and by the invisible rules of class. Fine linen must not be treated like coarse cotton. Wool must not be shocked by boiling water, unless you want it to shrink into something fit for a wealthy doll. Flannel has its own temperament. Lace is a nervous little aristocrat and must be handled as if it might faint. Men's shirts, with stiff fronts and collars, demand attention. Underclothes, despite the great Victorian talent for pretending bodies are purely decorative, tell the plain truth. Bodies sweat, bodies stained, bodies exist. Extremely inconsiderate of them. The basket may include marked linen, embroidered initials, or household stamps that identify the owner. These marks are useful because a laundress is expected to return every piece correctly, even when half the city seems to own white napkins of roughly the same shape. Losing a rich person's napkin can become a moral crisis. At least for you. For the household, it is a small annoyance. For you, it can mean docked pay, angry words, or the loss of work. The cloth remembers who owns it, and society insists that you remember too. You breathe through the first sting of soap and old dampness. It is not yet the full chemical bite that comes later, but the washhouse air already has layers. Coal smoke from nearby chimneys slips through cracks. Ash dust settles on windowsills. If you work in a city, the water itself may not feel innocent. Victorian urban life is crowded, smoky, and often badly drained. Cleanliness becomes more desirable partly because dirt is everywhere. This is one of the great little jokes of the age. People dream of spotless linen while living among horse manure, factory smoke, muddy streets, and rivers that sometimes behave like open drains. Very elegant, very fragrant. A full bouquet of progress. A quirky tidbit drifts in with the bundles. Some laundresses and households use urine in older cleaning practices, especially because stale urine produces ammonia, useful for loosening grease and stains. By the Victorian period, commercial alkalis and soaps are more common in many places, but the older knowledge does not vanish all at once. The idea sounds horrifying when you're tucked under a modern blanket. But for much of history, cleaning is a practical art built from whatever works. Humanity looks at a stain and says, with alarming confidence, something unpleasant will probably fix that. You begin with the least dramatic task. Counting. It sounds peaceful, almost clerical. 1 sheet, 2 pillowcases, 6 napkins, 4 shirts, 3 chemises, a tablecloth with suspicious brown splashes, cuffs, collars, towels, stockings. You count because the laundry must return complete. You count because cloth is valuable. You count because rich households may accuse poor workers easily. And because memory is not enough when steam fills the room and everyone is tired. Some laundresses use lists. Some rely on marks. Some rely on the grim magic of repetition. Your fingers move across fabric, and already your skin feels rough, as if the day is sanding you down. Historians still argue whether Victorian cleanliness was driven more by genuine public health concern, middle-class moral anxiety, religious ideas about purity, or simple social display. The answer are naturally on maybe all of them. Because history enjoys refusing tidy laundry baskets. By the middle of the 19th century, ideas about sanitation and disease are changing, and people increasingly connect filth with danger, though not always accurately. At the same time, a spotless cuff or snowy tablecloth becomes a badge of discipline. Clean clothes say that someone in the household has command over time. Servants, fuel, water, and women's labour. Usually women's labour. Funny how respectability keeps needing a woman with red hands standing behind it. You bend over the first tub. Water sloshes against wood. It is cold at first, and the chill climbs through your fingers, settling into the joints. Soon there will be hot water, then steam, then the heavy breath of the copper boiler. But for now, the day starts in grey tones. Outside, carts rattle over stones. A milk seller may call in the street. Somewhere, a maid in the rich household is already dusting polished furniture. While you handle the more intimate dirt that cannot be displayed in a parlour, you're not merely washing cloth. You're managing appearances. The rich family's world depends on things arriving clean without anyone thinking too much about how. The shirt is white. The sheet smells fresh. The napkin folds crisply beside the plate. The work disappears into the result, like a magician's assistant pushed gently behind a curtain, except the assistant is you, and the magic trick is mostly boiling water and a spine that has decided not to complain out loud. The first pieces slide into soak. Cloth darkens as it drinks. Air bubbles rise lazily, like tiny sighs escaping from the weak secrets. You press the linen down with both hands, and the tub answers with a slow, wet gulp. The day has begun properly now. The bundles no longer look like someone else's household. They look like ours. They look like heat not yet kindled, soap not yet dissolved, fumes not yet breathed, irons not yet lifted. You stand in the damp light with your sleeves rolled, your apron already marked, and the pale mound of washing waiting its turn, quiet as snow and twice as demanding. The first real sorting begins with your hands, not your eyes. Your fingers learn the difference between linen, cotton, wool, silk, flannel, and lace long before your tired brain feels ready to make polite decisions. Smooth linen slides cool and firm across your palm. Cotton gives more softly. Wool clings with a faint animal warmth, even when it is stale from wear. Lace catches on every cracked bit of skin as if it has been personally offended by your existence. You lay each piece aside according to its future suffering. Some will soak, some will boil, some will be rubbed, some must be coaxed like delicate guests who have wandered into the wrong kitchen. The rich household's laundry does not arrive as one simple heap of dirt. It arrives as a map of rank, gender, habit, illness, appetite, and vanity. Shirts tell on gentlemen, petticoats tell on ladies, table linen tells on dinners, napkins speak of sauces, wine, candle grease, and the occasional guest who has met a gravy boat with more enthusiasm than skill. Children's garments are small but somehow not modest in their demands. A little stocking may contain half a garden, a stair carpet, and possibly one philosophical question about jam. You separate the whites first, because whiteness is the grand performance. Sheets, pillowcases, towels, tablecloths, napkins, shirts, shifts, chemises, nightgowns, collars, and cuffs form the pale kingdom of respectability. In a wealthy Victorian household, white linen is both practical and symbolic. It can be boiled, bleached, blued, inspected, folded, displayed, and judged. A white tablecloth at dinner does not merely cover a table. It declares that the household has resources. It says there is enough water, fuel, soap, time, and human labour to make cloth look untouched by life. This is impressive, especially since life is extremely committed to touching everything. The darker items wait apart. Printed cotton dresses, woolen stockings, dyed petticoats, shawls, waistcoats, servants' aprons, and children's frocks cannot all be flung into the same treatment. Dyes may run, wool may shrink, silk may watermark. A careless soak can turn a garment into a financial accusation with sleeves. The wealthy may own more clothing than working people, but even among the rich, garments are valuable. Ready-made clothing is growing during the 19th century, especially for men. Yet much clothing still represents expense, tailoring, mending, and careful household management. You do not simply wash fabric, you protect property. You check pockets, because pockets are tiny museums of trouble. A gentleman's handkerchief may hide tobacco crumbs, a waistcoat pocket may hold a forgotten coin, a calling card, a pencil stub, or lint packed into corners like grey moss. A child's pocket may offer string, pebbles, a dead beetle, or something sticky that no court of law should be forced to identify. Occasionally, a laundress finds money, and the question of honesty becomes less philosophical when rent is due. Returning the coin may keep the customer. Keeping it may buy bread. Victorian moralists have much to say about honesty among the poor, usually from rooms where someone else has washed the curtains. Small stains receive your closest attention: ink on a cuff, grease at the edge of a waistcoat, tea on a muslin sleeve, blood from shaving on a gentleman's collar, modestly tiny and yet dramatic enough to demand treatment. Mud around hems tells of streets. Candle wax stiffens a napkin. Perspiration yellows underarms and collars. Though polite society rarely wants to discuss the moist engineering of human bodies, you rub a spot lightly between finger and thumb, deciding its fate. Cold water for some stains, hot for others, soap for grease, lemon juice and sunlight for certain marks when the weather allows. Oxalic acid may be used for ink or rust, but it is poisonous, and the word useful often travels with a small, ugly shadow. A mainstream fact sits in the rhythm of this work. Victorian laundering often depends on elaborate sorting because different fibres, dyes, and stains react badly to the same process. Modern washing hides this knowledge inside settings and labels. You possess it in your wrists. White linen can survive harsh treatment. Wool cannot. Silk may punish arrogance. Red dye may wander. Black garments can turn rusty or dull. Printed cotton can fade if treated too boldly. The laundry basket asks questions, and every wrong answer costs someone money. Unfortunately, the someone blamed is usually you. The underclothes are their own quiet category. The Victorians may wrap the body in layers and language, but linen worn next to the skin is honest. Chemises, drawers, shifts, nightdresses, stays, and shirts hold sweat, oils, and the invisible traces of ordinary living. Some garments come from sick rooms. Those require caution, though germ theory only gradually reshapes common understanding during the Victorian period. Many people still think in terms of bad air, miasma, weakness, dampness, and moral cleanliness, which is convenient if one wishes to blame both disease and laundry on insufficient discipline. The tiny organisms are not impressed by being ignored. A quirky tidbit belongs among the collars and cuffs. Detachable collars and cuffs become especially common for men in the 19th century because they soil quickly and can be washed separately from the shirt. This is wonderfully practical and deeply annoying. The collar gets dirty first, so instead of washing the whole shirt every time, the household sends out stiff little crescents and bands of linen to be scrubbed, starched, dried, shaped, and returned with military precision. A man may look crisp at breakfast while somewhere a woman has wrestled his collar into obedience. Civilization is built on small tyrannies, and some of them button at the throat. Historians still argue whether the explosion of white collars in the 19th century reflects industrial respectability, changing ideas of masculinity, office work, mass manufacturing, or a growing obsession with visible cleanliness. For the laundress, the debate is less airy. The collar is dirty, the collar must be clean, the collar must not crack, scorch, fray, vanish, or return limp as a disappointed noodle. You place the collars together, imagining them as a flock of stiff little birds. They will later demand starch, pressure, and heat. They will not thank you. Collars are not known for emotional generosity. You keep lace apart, because lace carries both beauty and danger for your wages. Fine lace caps, cuffs, collars, trimmings, and baby clothes may need gentle washing, careful drying, and patient pinning to preserve shape. A torn thread is a catastrophe far beyond its size. Lace turns the laundress into a surgeon, except surgeons are not expected to make the body smell of lavender afterward. You shake out one delicate piece, and it lies across your fingers like frost. It may have spent its evening in a drawing room, framing a throat that never once wondered who would clean it. There are household linens, too, broader and heavier. Tablecloths carry the memory of formal meals, folded long and wide, sometimes large enough to feel like handling a sail. Napkins are counted carefully. Serviettes, if the household prefers that word, may display initials. Towels are thick with use. Kitchen cloths may arrive from servants' quarters, rougher, more stained, and less honoured. Even among dirty things, there is hierarchy. The mistress's handkerchief receives a different gaze from the scullery cloth. Both are cloth. Both require cleaning. Only one is allowed to be delicate. You notice mending marks, darned stockings, patched sheets, and cuffs turned to extend their life. Wealth does not always mean waste without thought. Many Victorian households practice careful management, and a good housekeeper tracks linen with the seriousness of a banker. Sheets may be cut down when worn, large cloths made into smaller ones, old linen turned into bandages, dusters, or nursery rags. Cloth has a life cycle, and you meet it at every stage, from proud table linen to humble rag. This is almost comforting, until you remember that you too are expected to be endlessly useful at every stage of wear. The room grows more organised as the piles spread around you. Whites here, coloured cotton there, woolen separate, lace guarded, stained pieces set aside, collars counted, fine garments watched like sleeping cats. The disorder of the rich family's week becomes a system under your hands. You're not simply obeying instructions. You're reading fabric, predicting damage, and managing risk while standing in damp shoes. Outside, the world may speak of ladies, gentlemen, servants, morality, progress, an empire. Inside, you know the truth is simpler and heavier. Every clean appearance begins as someone else's sorting pile, and the secrets of a household pass through your fingers before they are made respectable again. You lower the sorted pieces into their first long soak, and the washhouse settles into a quieter kind of labour. This is the part that looks almost restful from a distance, which is how you know distance is a dangerous liar. The tubs stand open, round and deep, with water clouding as cloth gives up its first surrender. Linen shifts under the surface, cotton softens, stains bloom outward in faint brown, grey, and yellow ghosts. The water does not become beautiful, it becomes informative. If anyone ever tells you rich people do not sweat, you may politely invite them to inspect this tub and reconsider their theology. Soaking is not idleness, it is preparation. Dirt clings in layers, and Victorian laundry work often depends on persuading grime to loosen before the more violent stages begin. You mix in soap, soda, or other washing compounds according to what the cloth can bear. Washing soda, a form of sodium carbonate, is common in the 19th century and helps soften water and cut grease. It is useful, cheap, and unfriendly to skin, which is a theme the day seems very committed to developing. You stir the water with a wooden stick or dolly, watching dull bubbles gather around your wrists. Already, the chill has found the small bones in your hands. A mainstream historical fact rests in the tub. Hard water makes washing more difficult because minerals interfere with soap, so laundresses often use alkalis to improve cleaning. In towns and cities, the quality of water varies, and access to water is itself part of the labour. Some households have pumps, cisterns, or yards. Others require hauling. In working districts, women may share washhouses or use public facilities. Water, which seems so simple when it arrives obediently from a tap, is heavy when carried, sulky when dirty, and never quite grateful for being warmed. You push down a sheet that keeps rising to the surface, swollen with trapped air. It billows like some pale creature trying to escape its responsibilities. You hold it under until bubbles slip out and pop. The sound is small, almost sleepy. Nearby, collars soak in a separate pail, already plotting to become difficult later. Stained napkins wait in cooler water because hot water can set some marks more stubbornly. This is knowledge learned by repetition, mistake, instruction, and, occasionally, quiet disaster. One wrong temperature and a stain stops being a problem and becomes a permanent resident. The soak may last hours, sometimes overnight, depending on the schedule, the weather, the number of bundles, and the patience available. Patience, like soap, is always used faster than expected. In a busy washhouse, tubs may be prepared the evening before a boiling and scrubbing day. Cloth rests in water while the worker does not. There are fires to tend, children to feed, rooms to sweep, accounts to remember, and perhaps another customer's linen already drying in reluctant air. If you are a laundress working from home, the wash does not politely stay in one corner of your life. It steams, smells, drips, and spreads. Domestic space becomes workplace, and every chair looks nervous. The smell changes as the soaking deepens. Soap sits on top at first, sharp and fatty. Then old perspiration rises, mixed with dust, coal smoke, food, and the faint animal scent of wool. Linen from sick rooms may bring carbolic hints if disinfectants have been used, or merely the sour closeness of fever and closed curtains. The Victorian century sees growing concern about sanitation, especially after cholera outbreaks and reform campaigns draw attention to dirty water, overcrowding, and urban filth. Yet the practical work of cleanliness still lands heavily on women with tubs, not on pamphlets looking pleased with themselves. The quirky tidbit surfaces with the soaking mixtures. Some laundresses and housewives use bran water, made by boiling brain and straining the liquid, to wash delicate coloured fabrics or chintz because it can clean gently without stripping patterns as harshly as stronger soaps. It sounds almost like breakfast has wandered into the laundry by mistake. Imagine explaining to a hungry child that the bran is not for porridge today, because Lady Something's printed cotton must remain tasteful. Very nourishing for the fabric, less so for the child. You work the garments under by hand, lifting and pressing, lifting and pressing. The motion has a slow rhythm that could almost become calming, if it did not involve cold water creeping up your sleeves. Your apron darkens at the front. Your shoes take in damp from splashes on the floor. The boards or stones beneath you grow slick. Victorian laundresses often stand for long hours, bending over tubs in air that alternates between cold damp and hot steam. Even this early soaking stage asks the back to curve and the shoulders to hold tension. The body becomes another tool in the wash house, and tools are rarely asked how they feel. Historians still argue whether laundresses possessed more independence than other poor working women, because some could take in washing at home and negotiate with customers, or whether that independence was mostly an illusion, because low pay, competition, and punishing hours kept them trapped. As your hands disappear into cloudy water, the debate feels less like a neat question and more like a wet sleeve. Working at home may spare you a mistress standing over your shoulder, but it also brings the work into your kitchen, your sleep, your children's breathing space, your entire day. Freedom can smell a lot like damp linen when rent is due. You set aside stained pieces for special treatment. Grease may need soap rubbed directly in. Tea and coffee stains may be coaxed with boiling water if the fabric allows it. Fruit stains can respond to boiling water too, though not always obediently, because stains have personalities and none of them are well raised. Ink is more troublesome, sometimes treated with salts, acids, sour milk, or patience stretched beyond reasonable human design. Rust may meet lemon and salt, or stronger chemicals in households that dare them. Each remedy comes with risk. A stain may vanish. The fabric may weaken. Your skin may sting. The customer may still complain because the universe enjoys variety. The tubs rest in rows, and each one contains a different future. One tub will feed the boiler. One will demand hand-rubbing. One holds fine things that must not be bullied. You move among them in the dim light, checking, pressing, turning. Outside, the rich household continues elsewhere, perhaps with breakfast silver shining, curtains drawn back, a fire arranged, letters opened. The linen's owners may be discussing politics, marriages, weather, and the dreadful unreliability of servants. Their dirty laundry, meanwhile, is quietly changing the colour of your water. You lean closer and see the fabric loosen, threads swelling as water enters. There is something intimate about it, almost too intimate. The cloth gives up traces of skin, rooms, meals, illness, sleep, and vanity. Soaking is a kind of confession without words. You do not need to know the family secrets by name. You see them in ringed collars, grey cuffs, stiffened napkins, and the tired yellowing where a body has worked against its own clothing. Victorian respectability depends on making bodies seem controlled, dry, orderly, and fragrant. The soak tells a less polished story. Everybody leaks, everybody stains, everybody leaves evidence. The water cools around your hands, soap scum gathers in pale streaks. A sheet rises again, and you push it down with the heel of your palm, patient because impatience will not make the work lighter. The tub accepts it with a soft gulp. All around you, the room waits in damp suspension. Nothing is clean yet, but the first surrender has begun. Dirt loosens in silence. Threads swell. Stains blur at their edges. Your hands redden. Your sleeves cling. And the washhouse breathes slowly, as if the whole heavy day is steeping along with the linen. The copper boiler begins as a dark waiting mouth, and you feed it water before you feed it linen. Pail after pail goes in, each one heavy enough to remind your arms that water is not the gentle substance poets keep promising. Beneath the copper, the fire takes hold slowly, first with a dry crackle, then a steady orange glow. Coal smoke thickens in the air, carrying that bitter mineral smell that settles at the back of the throat. Soon the room warms in patches. Your face feels the heat while your skirt still brushes cold damp at the hem. Victorian comfort is rarely evenly distributed. The soaked whites are ready for boiling, the stern ceremony that separates ordinary washing from the pursuit of dazzling respectability. Sheets, pillowcases, shirts, towels, tablecloths, napkins, shifts, and sturdy cotton underthings are lifted from their tubs, dripping, heavy, and reluctant. You haul them toward the copper, and the wet cloth pulls downward with the sulky determination of a sleeping child who refuses school. A dry sheet is a sheet, a wet sheet is a personal enemy with corners. Boiling linen is a mainstream fact of Victorian laundry work, especially for whites. Heat helps loosen dirt, kill some infectious matter, and strengthen the effect of soap and alkali. Long before automatic machines politely agitate and rinse behind a closed lid, laundresses use copper boilers, tubs, dollies, possing sticks, paddles, and their own shoulders to make water move through cloth. The copper is not always literally made entirely of copper by this period, but the name remains, because domestic language likes tradition almost as much as it likes confusing strangers. You add soap or prepared washing mixture, sometimes shaved or sliced so it dissolves more easily. In some places, soda joins it. The water dulls and clouds, the first garments sink under, then swell upward, their trapped air escaping in blisters of bubbles. Steam rises, and the washhouse becomes its own weather system. A damp cloud gathers near the ceiling. Window glass sweats. Your hair sticks at your temples. The air grows close, then closer, then rudely intimate. If fog could wear an apron and supervise you, it would feel like this. You grip a wooden dolly or long stick and begin to stir. The motion is slow at first, because the mass of fabric resists. The linen rolls and folds under the surface. A shirt sleeve appears, twists, and vanishes again like a pale eel reconsidering its life choices. You push it down, you lift and turn. The water slaps the sides of the boiler. Steam warms your cheeks until they prickle. Your hands stay busy, but you keep them clear of the deepest heat, because boiling water is not interested in forgiveness. Some laundresses use a dolly tub, with a wooden tool plunged and twisted to force water through clothes. Others use a possing stick, shaped something like a plunger, to pound and churn the linen. The action is rhythmic, almost musical if your standards for music have been lowered by exhaustion. Thump, stir, lift, press, thump, stir, lift, press. The body falls into the pattern because the mind would rather drift. There is a sleepy comfort in repetition, though it arrives carrying a bucket and wearing a backache. The smell changes again. The old sourness weakens under heat. Soap grows sharper. The rising steam carries fat, ash, soda, damp cotton, and the faint sweetness of linen fibre. Coal smoke threads through everything. When the boiler is full, the room feels less like a workplace and more like a stew in which you are one of the ingredients. This is not the kind of steam modern people pay for at a spa. No one offers cucumber water. No one hands you a towel, unless it is dirty and someone expects you to boil it. A quirky tidbit belongs to the boiler's hot breath. Many households and laundresses rely on weather law for drying day, but they also develop strong instincts about boiling time by sight, smell, and touch. A careful worker may judge whether whites are ready not by a clock, but by the look of the water, the looseness of the cloth, and the way stains surrender. This sounds mystical until you realize it is expertise. Also, Clocks are not always conveniently placed in smoky washhouses, and even when they are, they do not know the difference between gravy and coal dust. You skim or stir, watching grey froth gather. Some dirt floats free, some remains in seams, cuffs, hems, and folds. Shirts are especially stubborn at the neck and wrist, where skin oils settle into fabric. Table linen can hide grease that heat wakes, but does not fully remove. The boiler is powerful, but it is not magic. Unfortunately, wealthy households often expect magic, delivered cheaply, on time, and folded square. If magic existed, it would probably charge extra for napkins. Historians still argue whether the growth of Victorian laundry standards made people healthier overall, or simply created new burdens for working women while giving the middle and upper classes a visible language of cleanliness. Boiling can indeed reduce some dangers in soiled linen, particularly when illness is present, yet the process exposes laundresses to heat stress, fumes, long hours of damp, and injury. Health becomes unevenly distributed. One person sleeps in fresh sheets, another breathes the steam that made them possible. The copper lid may be lifted and replaced. Water must be watched so it does not boil over or run too low. Fire must be fed, but not too fiercely. Too little heat, and the dirt remains smug. Too much, and cloth suffers. Soap foams wildly, or the boiler becomes dangerous. You're managing a balance of flame, water, fabric, and expectation. It is domestic work. Yes, but domestic does not mean simple. A kitchen knife is domestic too, and no sensible person waves it around while yawning. When the first batch is ready to come out, the real heaviness announces itself. Wet, hot linen must be lifted carefully, often with tongs, sticks, or paddles, then carried or dragged toward rinsing tubs. The cloth clings to itself in scalding folds. Steam bursts upward as you raise it. Fogging your face, you turn away slightly. Blinking, the weight pulls your shoulders forward. Each sheet feels larger than a bed and far less cooperative. You tip it into cooler water, where it lands with a slap and a sigh. The rinse water clouds instantly. Soap, loosened dirt, and heat spread through it. You press the cloth down again, and your arms complain in private. Around you, the boiler continues its low, wet mutter, ready for the next load. There is no grand pause, no little bell of achievement. Victorian laundry is not a staircase with neat landings. It is a wheel. Soak, boil, rinse, rub, rinse again, wring, blue, starch, dry, iron, fold. Each stage promises progress and immediately creates another task. Very efficient, in the way a treadmill is efficient. You stand close to the copper while steam beads on your eyelashes. Outside, the day may still be cool and grey, but in here the air trembles. The rich family's whites have begun their transformation, not yet pure, not yet crisp, but stripped of their first dull veil. The water has taken on the colour of use. The linen has brightened by a shade. Your hands are red, your sleeves damp, your breath warm in your throat. The copper breathes, the fire glows, and the washhouse weather rolls on, soft, heavy, and faintly poisonous in its kindness. The linen comes from the rinse heavy and steaming, and now the gentler illusion ends. Soaking has softened it, boiling has loosened it, but the dirt that hides in seams, hems, cuffs, collars, and corners still waits for direct persuasion. That persuasion is your hands. You bend over the tub, set a shirt against the washboard or rub fabric against fabric, and begin the long, rasping conversation between cloth, soap, water, and skin. Scrub, turn, press, rub, scrub, turn, press, rub. The sound is small but relentless, like rain made of effort. The soap is not the creamy, perfumed comfort a modern bathroom might imagine. It may be hard, coarse, strongly alkaline, made from fats and lye, sometimes improved by manufacturers, sometimes made at home in older styles, and often harsh enough to punish the hands that use it. Washing soda joins the attack. It helps remove grease and soften water, but it also strips oils from your skin. Your fingers begin to feel tight. Tiny cracks sting. Nails soften and split. The wealthy customer will notice a grey cuff, but not the raw line opening across your knuckle. Very refined of everyone involved. A mainstream historical fact sits painfully in your palms. Laundresses commonly suffered from sore, cracked, reddened hands because repeated exposure to hot water, soap, alkalis, and friction damaged the skin. The work requires exactly the parts of the body most easily injured by the work. You cannot scrub without fingers. You cannot wring without wrists. You cannot rub collars clean while keeping your hands soft as a lady's. Respectable whiteness eats worker softness first. You take a gentleman's shirt and turn your attention to the collar band, where skin oils have settled into the fabric like they signed a lease. Detachable collars are waiting elsewhere for harsher treatment, but the shirt itself still holds dull rings around the neck. You wet the soap, rub it into the stained place, fold cloth against cloth, and work the fibres together. The motion warms the fabric. Foam gathers, then dulls. You rinse, inspect, and rub again. There is no romance in a collar stain. It is just labour wearing the shape of a neck. The washboard, when present, is both helper and enemy. Its ridged surface gives the cloth something to fight against, making rubbing more effective. It also scrapes your fingers if they slip, and they do slip because everything is wet, soapy, and determined to escape. Some laundresses work without boards, rubbing by hand in wooden tubs. Others pound garments with a dolly or beetle, especially heavier cloth. Every method has a cost. The cloth must yield. The body must pay. You move to napkins, which are smaller but smug. Grease hides in them, especially from rich meals with butter, gravy, sauces, and roasted meats. Victorian tables of the well-off may produce a lot of linen, because formal dining likes layers of cloth almost as much as it likes rules. Napkins, tablecloths, tray cloths, sideboard cloths, glass cloths, and kitchen cloths all multiply under the banner of refinement. A dinner party ends in conversation and candlelight for the guests. For you, it ends as a stack of spotted rectangles needing soap and moral encouragement. A quirky tidbit foams up in the tub. Some guides recommend using stale bread, pipe clay, fuller's earth, or chalky powders for certain stains, especially greasy marks on delicate fabrics, because these absorb oil before washing. This sounds like the laundry has become a pantry with trust issues, but absorbent powders can be sensible. Grease wants to cling, and anything that draws it out helps. You imagine explaining to a grand lady that her elegant gown has been improved by old bread crumbs. She might faint gently onto a sofa, which would then need cleaning too. The cycle is merciless. The lye-based harshness is not always visible at once. At first, your hands simply feel clean, too clean. Then the skin tightens. A sting appears along the side of one finger. Heat makes it worse. Soap finds every small opening and sits there like an unwelcome guest. You rinse, but rinsing does not restore what the alkali has taken. Fat leaves your skin. Protection leaves with it. The day goes on. More cloth arrives under your hands. Historians still argue whether domestic advice books of the Victorian era truly helped working women by spreading practical knowledge, or whether they mainly shifted responsibility onto women to manage impossible standards with perfect thrift, science, and cheerfulness. Advice can be useful, certainly. It may tell you how to treat stains, mix starch, avoid shrinking wool, or whiten linen. But advice does not make the boiler lighter. It does not stop lye from biting. It does not turn 12 hours into 6. A printed household manual never seems to include a chapter titled How to Grow a Second Spine by Thursday. The water in the tub changes from clear to grey. Soap curds collect when minerals interfere. Loose dirt floats away. but the cloth must be rinsed repeatedly until the water runs cleaner. Each rinse means lifting, pressing, turning, and sometimes carrying. A shirt in water is heavier than a shirt on a body. A sheet in water becomes a domestic sail determined to drag you toward the floor. You twist smaller pieces between your hands, forcing out suds, feeling the strain travel up your wrists. Larger pieces must wait for stronger wringing, perhaps with another woman's help, because even laundry understands teamwork when it becomes unbearable. There is danger in the repetition because it encourages drifting. Your mind slides away from the motion. You think about rent, bread, coal, a child's cough, a neighbour's gossip, the customer who complains but pays late. Then a knuckle strikes the board, or hot water splashes your wrist, and the room snaps back. The tub is still there, the shirt is still stained, the soap is still sharp. No one has secretly completed the work while you were thinking, very inconsiderate of reality. You rub a chemise more gently, not because it is less dirty, but because the cloth has thinned from use. Fine fabric wears in secret places, underarms, necklines, hems, and seams all reveal the life of the garment. Wealthy families may mend and reuse linen carefully, and old pieces may pass down the household ladder. The mistress's worn sheet may become a servant's sheet, then a child's cloth, then a rag. Cleanliness and thrift walk together, though one often steps on your fingers. The soap stings again. You flex your hands under water, watching the whitened skin wrinkle and soften. The work has a way of making your own body feel less solid, as if you too are being soaked, rubbed, thinned, and wrung. Still, the results appear. The collar band lightens, the napkin releases its grease shadow. The shift looks fresher. The shirt front begins to resemble the crisp, respectable thing it is expected to become. Progress arrives by millimetres, then by shades, then by the quiet satisfaction of fabric that has yielded. You place the scrubbed pieces into another rinse, and they settle beneath the surface with a weary grace. Foam drifts away from them in cloudy ribbons. Your hands hover above the tub, reddened, rough, and aching. The rich family's clothes are growing cleaner, while your skin grows less whole. That is the bargain written in soap and water. You reach for the next cuff, breathe through the sting, and begin again, letting the washboard's soft rasp carry the room forward, one rubbed thread at a time. A pail stands near the wall with a liquid far less friendly than ordinary suds. Its smell reaches you before your hands come near it, sharp, mineral, and strangely clean in the way a lightning storm smells clean, meaning impressive from a distance, and rather alarming when trapped indoors with it. The white cotton and linen must become brighter still. Mere cleanliness is not enough for a household that wants sheets gleaming on bedsteads and tablecloths shining beneath silver dishes. Clean cloth is useful. Dazzling cloth is social evidence. You prepare a whitening bath with cautious movements, because chloride of lime is not a companion to treat casually. Also called bleaching powder, it is widely used during the 19th century to whiten cotton and linen far more quickly than relying entirely on sun and grass. Mixed with water, it releases the power of chlorine compounds against stains and yellowing. This is a mainstream historical fact, and your nose confirms it without waiting for a learned lecture. The bath gives off an acrid bite that catches in your throat and makes your eyes feel suddenly awake, which is generous, since the rest of you would prefer a chair. The pieces destined for bleaching must be sturdy. Fine lace may suffer. Coloured cloth must remain safely distant unless the customer wishes her tasteful pattern transformed into a pale memory. Wool and silk look on from their separate places, spared this particular trial. You lower white linen carefully into the solution. The cloth slips beneath the surface, folding in slow, pale shapes. Your fingers avoid lingering in the liquid, yet splashes find the skin anyway. A drop lands on the rough crack beside your nail. It burns with a bright little sting, direct and personal, as though the chemical has been waiting specifically to meet you. bleaching answers a practical problem. White cloth yellows with skin oils, smoke, storage, poor rinsing, and ordinary age. The rich value whiteness partly because it proves that linen is being tended with great effort. But the old method of laying linen on grass in sunlight can take time and space. Bleaching grounds exist where fabric is spread in the open air, treated and watched over until sunlight and repeated wetting brighten it. Industrial chemistry offers a quicker path. Quicker, naturally, and means someone gets to breathe the shortcut. You lift a corner with a wooden stick, checking the way the fibres pale. The solution must not be too strong or left too long, because over-bleaching weakens cloth. Linen that looks glorious today may tear sooner, and then the launderers may be blamed for poor handling rather than praised for rescuing it from dinginess. The work is full of these pleasing arrangements. Use too little, and the sheet is dull. Use too much, and it is ruined. Use the exact right amount, and nobody notices anything except that the linen looks as it ought to have looked all along. The air is thickening. A window stands open, but the outdoor city offers smoke and soot instead of pure relief. Fresh air is more a hopeful idea than a reliable visitor. In a small washhouse, fumes gather close to damp walls and low ceilings. Your breathing becomes shallower without your deciding it. Your throat scratches. A cough starts somewhere behind your breastbone and rises politely at first, then insists. You turn your face toward the doorway and draw in cooler air, but the bath remains beside you, quietly sending its sharp message into the room. The danger does not always arrive as a dramatic collapse. It can arrive as headaches, irritated eyes, coughing, breathlessness, nausea, sore skin, and a tiredness easily mistaken for ordinary overwork. Ordinary overwork is already plentiful enough to hide several crimes. Alkalis strip your hands, steam burdens your lungs, bleaching fumes join the collection. The clothing brightens by stages while your own body absorbs the dull cost. A household may admire the sweetness of its nursery linen without ever imagining the laundress blinking through fumes to make it so. There are other whiteners and cleaning aids within reach of Victorian practice, including ammonia, acids for particular stains, and mixtures passed through household manuals or local knowledge. Ammonia can help with grease, but its piercing vapour is hardly a scented invitation to breathe deeply. Sometimes substances are used separately and carefully. Sometimes knowledge is imperfect. Measures are guessed. Ventilation is poor, and desperation encourages risks. You do not wear protective gloves shaped by modern science. You wear your own skin, already sore, because that is what working women are generally issued. A quirky tidbit floats above the whitening bath like a strange little bubble. Long before chemical bleach makes speed fashionable, linen can be spread across bleaching greens, broad grassy spaces where sunlight, dew, water, and patient repetition slowly whiten fabric. In some places, theft from bleaching grounds becomes a serious worry, because yards of linen lying in the open are both valuable and temptingly unattended. Imagine your finest sheets becoming brighter under the sky while someone nearby considers simply walking away with them. Even laundry left peacefully in a meadow cannot escape adventure. You move each whitened piece into clean water, because bleach must be rinsed away thoroughly. Fabric slides from one bath to the next, leaving faint trails of dripping liquid. The rinsing water clouds, and you change it, lifting pails, bending, pouring, turning. There is no elegant gesture available for this. Your arms work steadily, and your lungs accept the air offered to them. A shirt front looks brighter now, almost radiant in the dim room. It is a peculiar victory when a collar gleams while your own eyes water. Historians still argue whether chemical bleaching represented genuine liberation from slower, land-hungry washing methods, or whether it simply transferred the hidden price of speed onto workers who handled dangerous materials with little protection. Both ideas settle heavily in the washhouse. Faster whitening can mean more linen processed, more customers served, and perhaps more income. It can also mean more fumes in one day, more damaged hands, and more demand from households that soon decide quick brilliance is no longer impressive, merely expected. A mistress examining a returned tablecloth may raise it toward the light and approve its whiteness. She may not know precisely what makes it bright. Perhaps she thinks of soap, skill, and wholesome fresh air. She does not see the sting along your fingers, the red rims around your eyes, or the brief dizziness that makes you grip the edge of the tub until the floor becomes steady again. The tablecloth carries no label saying that its purity has been purchased with your lungs. It simply folds neatly, innocent as snow. You rinse until the sharp smell fades from the cloth, though it remains in the room and in your nose. The linens float pale and subdued, cleared of their yellow cast, prepared to display the wealth that sends them away dirty and receives them back transformed. Your cough softens to a small rasp. Water drips from your forearms. The open window lets in a cold thread of air, and you turn your face toward it for a moment, breathing carefully, while the whitening bath waits at your side. Quiet, useful, and cruel. The rinsed linen looks cleaner. Certainly. But beneath the cloudy washhouse light it still carries a weary creaminess, a faint yellow cast that refuses to behave like true snow. The fibres may be free of obvious grime, yet white cloth has its own vanity. It must look cool, bright, untouched by smoke, sweat, soap residue, old storage, and all the warm little tints of ordinary living. You stand over a fresh tub of clear water with a small wrapped lump of blue in your hand, preparing to commit one of laundry's loveliest deceptions. You dip the blue into the water and move it gently, watching thin curls of colour drift out like evening mist. The tub takes on a pale sky tint, delicate enough that a careless eye might miss it. This is not dyeing in the bold sense. You do not intend to send the family sheets home looking like the sea. You want only the faintest veil of blue, because blue works against yellow in the eye. A slightly bluish white appears fresher, colder, and cleaner than a yellowish white. The cloth has not become purer in its soul. It has received a flattering correction. Society is very fond of those. Bluing is a mainstream historical fact of laundry work in the 19th century. Laundresses and household workers commonly add a small amount of blue colouring to the final rinse of white fabrics to counteract yellowing. Indigo may be used, and later manufactured laundry blues become convenient household products. Some blues are sold as little balls, cakes, powders, or bags that can be swirled through the rinse water. The aim is careful illusion, no more visible than a polite smile at an awkward dinner. You test the water with the cautious seriousness of someone handling a customer's bed linen and her own livelihood at the same time. Too little blue, and the whites remain dull. Too much, and a sheet may emerge streaked or suspiciously tinted, suggesting that the bed has been made up with the flag of a very melancholy nation. You stir until the colour spreads evenly. No dark clouds must settle in one corner. No loose speck must cling to a cuff. The water must be blue enough to fool the eye, but never blue enough to invite questions. A pillowcase goes in first. It folds beneath the surface and drinks the tinted rinse. You move it slowly with both hands, taking care not to leave it crushed in one position. Pale ripples climb its seams. When you raise it, water falls in quiet streams from the corners, and the fabric seems suddenly crisper to look at, not because it is dry, and certainly not because your eyes are enjoying a rest, but because the warm yellow tiredness has softened. The pillowcase now suggests fresh air, open windows, cool beds, and perfect sleep. It does not mention tubs, red knuckles, or the fact that you are standing with wet cuffs and an ache between your shoulders. One by one, the shirts enter the blue water. White shirt fronts are especially important, since they sit openly beneath gentlemen's coats and declare calm authority to the room. A gentleman may have opinions on commerce, government, railways, foreign affairs, and the decline of manners, but a faintly yellow shirt front can undermine all of it with astonishing efficiency. You pass the linen through the water and think kindly that public power is apparently supported by a carefully disguised rinse. The tablecloth follows, broad and weighty, requiring room to move so that the blue reaches it evenly. You gather one edge, guide the folds downward, then turn the cloth through the tinted water. Tiny waves touch the wooden sides of the tub. The blue is almost soothing to look at, a calm little lake indoors, except lakes rarely charge you for mistakes. You imagine the cloth spread beneath china, glass, and silver, glowing beneath candlelight while guests praise the household's elegance. Not one of them will lean over the roast and murmur, "What a remarkably well-calculated optical correction." A quirky tidbit hides in the colour itself, alongside indigo. Some laundry blue has historically been made from smalt, a finely ground blue glass coloured with cobalt. The idea of washing snowy linen with powdered blue glass sounds as if someone has confused housekeeping with decorating a cathedral window, yet the colour helps mask yellow tones. Laundry knowledge has a charming habit of placing unexpected things in tubs. Grass, bran, blue glass, suspicious powders, and enough chemistry to make the washhouse feel like a laboratory, without the privilege of calling itself one. Your fingers pinch and release each corner of cloth, searching for dark traces of blue. A poorly dissolved lump can leave marks that require more rinsing, more effort, and possibly an explanation delivered to someone who has never carried a tub in her life. There is an art to making labour invisible. The better you do it, the less anyone thinks you have done. A perfectly blued cuff looks naturally white. A badly blued cuff becomes evidence. This is the familiar reward of skilled service. Success disappears, while error develops a loud personality. The tub grows slightly paler as the fabric takes up tiny portions of colour, and dripping pieces are removed. You refresh the water when needed, wrapping the blue carefully so it will not scatter too freely. Some laundresses use a small muslin bag for the bluing, keeping granules from touching the cloth directly. The bag trails through the water like a little blue charm, humble and important. There is almost a ritual feeling to it. Dip, swirl, judge, immerse, lift. You are painting brightness without leaving paint behind. Historians still argue whether the Victorian passion for snowy white linen reflects improving hygiene more strongly than it reflects class display and ideals of moral purity. Your blue rinse suggests that appearances carry great weight. White is not merely clean. It is corrected, heightened, persuaded into looking cleaner than simple washing can manage. A wealthy household does not wish its linen to resemble honest cloth that has lived among human beings. It wishes linen to resemble an idea, cool and unstained, as if every bed is occupied by an angel with excellent habits. The comedy is that the blue itself must remain secret. If a sheet looks yellow, your work is judged lacking. If it looks blue, your work is judged clumsy. Only the narrow space between those failures wins approval. You guide a nightgown through the water, its soft folds floating around your hands like a pale underwater flower. A lace-trimmed edge drifts near the surface, more fragile than the stout linen pieces, so you treat it lightly. The water slides away from it with barely a sound. Soon, a row of freshly rinsed whites rests, ready for the hard squeezing that removes their dripping weight. Even wet, they now possess a cleaner light, a cool cast that lifts them from dull ivory toward the admired illusion of pure white. The washhouse itself remains grey and damp. Your apron is splashed. Your hands look raw against the delicate blue water. There is no tinting bath that can make them appear rested. You draw out the final pillowcase and let it drain between your palms. Drops fall steadily, tapping into the tub like slow rain. The faint blue water trembles, reflecting a slice of window and a ceiling blurred by moisture. All that labour, and now a final whisper of colour teaches the linen how to look innocent. You lay it with the others, pale, quiet, and almost luminous, ready to make a rich household seem cleaner than life has ever truly allowed. The linen cannot remain soft and yielding, pleasant though that might feel against a tired cheek. Shirts, collars, cuffs, petticoats, aprons, caps, and table linen must acquire structure. They must hold their shapes with the firm confidence expected of people who own enough clothing to have another person stand over a tub for them. You turn toward the starch pan, where a cloudy white mixture waits to convert ordinary washed cloth into something crisp, obedient, and faintly ridiculous. Starch begins with a simple powder, commonly made from wheat, rice, or potatoes, mixed into water and heated until it thickens into a smooth, translucent preparation. It has the appearance of thin paste and the social importance of a family crest. When properly used, starch stiffens fabric, helps it keep a sharp finish, and gives collars, cuffs, shirt fronts, caps, petticoats, and certain household linens the polished appearance prized in respectable Victorian dress. Cleanliness alone suggests that a garment has been washed. Starch suggests that somebody has been thoroughly managed. You stir the mixture carefully, breaking up lumps with a wooden spoon. Lumps are enemies. A lump of starch lodged in a collar can dry into a hard pale blemish. And a hard pale blemish is exactly the sort of thing a gentleman discovers 5 minutes before wanting to blame someone. The mixture must be smooth, neither too weak nor too stiff. Too little leaves collars sadly limp. Too much turns them into small architectural features. A collar should encircle the neck, not make a reasonable attempt to govern it. The detachable collars and cuffs now receive their grand treatment. You dip them into the warm starch and work the liquid through the fibres, pressing gently so every part takes in an even measure. They become slippery between your fingers. You squeeze away the excess, then set them aside with care. A collar may be a small item, but it carries immense responsibility. It frames the male throat in business offices, churches, drawing rooms, railway carriages, and dinners where everyone is pretending not to be bored. Its white stiffness announces discipline, self-command, and the ownership of at least one laundress somewhere in the economy. A mainstream historical fact takes shape in your hands. Detachable linen collars and cuffs become increasingly popular during the 19th century because they can be washed, starched, and changed more often than the main shirt. They allow the visible parts of a gentleman's outfit to appear fresh, even when the rest of his shirt has not undergone the same enthusiastic attention. This is practical, economical, and rather like polishing the front step while hoping nobody examines the kitchen. You turn to shirt fronts, especially those intended for formal wear. They need a flatter, firmer finish than the softer linen worn in bed or beneath layers of clothing. You pass the starch through them, then lay them smooth so wrinkles do not dry into permanent insults. A stiff white bosom under a dark coat gives the gentleman an impressive, upright appearance. He may have the emotional flexibility of a garden rake, but at least the shirt will match. Women's clothing makes its own demands. Petticoats may be starched so skirts stand away from the legs and rustle with a satisfying sense of volume. Aprons and caps worn by domestic servants require a crisp, neat look, because a wealthy household likes its workers to appear as clean and ordered as its linen, even while those workers spend their days among ash, grease, coal, spills, and complaints. You starch a cap frill carefully, knowing it will later sit above a maid's tired forehead like a little white flag of surrender nobody interprets correctly. Children's garments may receive a lighter touch. A tiny pinafore can be made fresh and neat, though children have an extraordinary talent for restoring fabric to its natural state of jam, grass, crumbs, and mystery within moments. Starching a child's clothing is a declaration of hope against overwhelming evidence. You smooth a small collar and imagine it surviving breakfast. It is good to maintain ambitions. Table linen can be starched too, depending on household preference and use. A crisp cloth lies more handsomely across polished wood. Napkins fold more sharply. Tray cloths and sideboard cloths present an ordered scene beneath glassware. Silver, decanters, bowls, and dishes. The dining room depends on surfaces behaving properly. Cloth must hang correctly. Napkins must stand or fold precisely. Food must arrive hot. Conversation must remain civilized. Nobody must point out that all this grandeur has left a woman in a steamy room turning starch through damp cloth until her wrists ache. A quirky tidbit sits quietly in the pan. Laundresses may add small amounts of wax, gum, borax, or even a little blue to starch preparations in pursuit of smoother ironing, greater gloss, or a brighter finish. Recipes vary, and household manuals offer confident instructions for creating the perfect polish. This turns the starch pan into a modest cauldron of respectability, where a pinch of this and a stir of that may help a collar shine like a gentleman's opinion of himself. The danger of starch is subtler than the sting of strong chemicals, yet it adds its portion to the strain. The mixture must be made over heat. Starched garments dry into stiff shapes that demand careful handling. The finish must later be activated and perfected beneath hot irons. Fine particles of dried starch can shake into the air as garments are handled, mingling with coal dust, steam, soap residue, and the already burdened atmosphere. Every process lays down another thin layer of effort, like sediment in your chest and shoulders. Historians still argue whether stiffly starched Victorian clothing primarily expresses ideals of discipline and modesty, or whether it functions most powerfully as visible class performance, proving that a household commands labour enough to keep clothing immaculate and uncomfortable. You cannot help suspecting that discomfort is part of the charm. People who can sit calmly while a rigid collar presses their neck seem trustworthy, or at least too constrained to cause sudden trouble. A petticoat that crackles when a lady moves may declare refinement, though it also sounds as if she is smuggling autumn leaves through the parlour. You draw a cuff from the starch, smooth it between your palms, and place it beside its pair. The pieces lie in tidy rows, pale and damp, awaiting drying and pressing. Each little strip of linen has passed from human grime to whitened purity, then into this final discipline of shape. The cloth no longer merely needs to be clean. It must obey. It must stand upright, fold sharply, rustle neatly, and carry the reputation of people who will never know the exact texture of warm starch on roughened fingers. The pan grows cooler as you finish. A skin begins to form on its surface, thin and milky, trembling when you stir once more. Around you, softened linens wait for ordinary drying, while the starched pieces lie apart like recruits preparing for inspection. Your hands feel sticky now instead of soapy, your knuckles still tender beneath the paste. You lift the last collar, press away the excess, and lay it flat with the others. Soon it will be firm enough to help a rich gentleman appear spotless, serious, and entirely unaware that his dignity has just been cooked in a pan. The starched collars lie almost dry, firm at the edges, and the shirts wait in folded heaps with their dampness measured just so. Too wet, and the iron will drag through a swamp of steam. Too dry, and wrinkles will cling like stubborn gossip. You lift one shirt, feel the cool moisture hidden in the cloth, and turn toward the hearth where the flat irons stand heating, black and solemn, like a row of small metal animals that have never once considered kindness. A flat iron is exactly what its name suggests. A solid piece of iron, smooth beneath, heavy in the hand, heated on a stove or before a fire. It has no cord, no cheerful temperature setting, and certainly no gentle little light announcing readiness. You test its heat by holding your hand near it, by touching it with a dampened finger, or by passing it lightly over a scrap of cloth. A quick hiss tells you it is hot. A scorch mark tells you it was hotter than your judgment. The difference can be one distracted breath. Ironing is a mainstream historical fact of laundry work in wealthy households and commercial washhouses alike. Pressing is essential to the finished appearance of washed clothing, especially starched collars, cuffs, shirt fronts, caps, aprons, and table linen. Garments may be perfectly clean, beautifully whitened, and carefully starched, but without pressing they remain merely respectable in theory. The iron gives them the sharp, polished face required in public. Society, naturally, judges the face. You wrap your hand around the handle of the first iron and feel the weight settle into your wrist. A common flat iron can weigh several pounds, and some are heavier. It must be lifted, moved, set down, reheated, exchanged, lifted again, and guided over cloth for hours. Your arm learns the rhythm quickly, because it has no real alternative. Press forward, lift, return. Smooth with the free hand, press forward again. The table trembles gently beneath the motion. A white shirt spreads before you like a quiet field. You smooth the sleeves first, teasing seams into place, laying out each cuff, making certain no fold hides beneath the surface. The iron passes over the linen with a dry whisper. Warmth releases the smell of clean, damp cloth and starch. A homely scent made less comforting by the fact that your shoulders have already decided they strongly object to homeliness. Steam lifts in tiny breaths where moisture remains. The shirt begins to flatten, taking on an orderly sheen. The iron cools sooner than you would like. It always does. You set it near the heat and pick up another, checking the sole for soot or roughness before it touches the white fabric. A dirty iron bottom can mark a garment in one careless glide, undoing hours of cleaning with a single black streak. There are polishing powders, cloths, waxes, and careful methods for keeping iron surfaces smooth. You run the warmed iron over a test rag first. Because trust is charming in a person and foolish in a piece of heated metal, collars require concentration. A starched collar must be pressed smooth without wrinkling, scorched edges, or uneven stiffness. You work from one side, then the other, setting the shape beneath firm strokes. The linen grows glossy and rigid. You turn it gently and press again. It begins to resemble the severe little wall it will soon form around a gentleman's neck. One cannot help admiring a fashion that makes eating, swallowing, and turning the head feel like matters requiring character. Cuffs follow, then shirt fronts, each demanding a clean finish. Some pieces are polished by applying pressure and heat in ways that create a slight shine. The gentleman who wears them may believe he is projecting sober intelligence. In reality, he is displaying several hours of a woman leaning over hot metal, making sure his wrists look trustworthy. It is a remarkable amount of work for two small circles that spend much of their day emerging from coat sleeves. A quirky tidbit rests beside the hearth in the shape of a box iron, instead of being one solid heated block. Some irons are hollow and can hold a hot metal slug, or even glowing charcoal in certain designs. The idea is to keep the iron hot longer, sparing some constant exchange at the stove. Yet charcoal irons can bring smoke and fumes close to the worker, and hot slugs require careful handling. Progress arrives, as usual, holding out one helpful hand while the other quietly warms afresh in convenience. You unfold a tablecloth across the ironing surface, and its size changes the mood of the task. Shirts are intimate puzzles of sleeves and seams. A tablecloth is a wide plane, demanding long strokes and careful folding. You stretch it smooth, press along one breadth, then move its mass gradually across the table. The iron glides with a soft rasp. Crisp lines appear where folds will later form. At dinner, the cloth will sit beneath dishes, candlesticks, cutlery, and elbows, radiating calm order until someone drops sauce upon it with the casual confidence of a person who has never washed anything larger than a handkerchief. The heat enters your face and forearms. Your feet remain planted for too long in the same position. Your back tightens from leaning. The weight of each iron works at the tendons in your hands and elbows. Burns are always possible. A brief touch to the wrist, a careless grasp, an iron knock toward the edge, a hot sole brushing fabric or skin, even without a dramatic accident. The steady strain gathers. Ironing rooms in larger laundries can become stifling, crowded with heated equipment and workers standing over pressing tables in air thick with warmth and damp cloth. Historians still argue whether mechanized ironing equipment truly improved the lives of laundry workers, as it appeared in larger 19th century establishments, or whether it mainly increased the quantity of linen employers expected women to finish in a day. Machines can press quickly and evenly, certainly, so they can also catch fingers, radiate heat, require relentless pacing, and transform skill into a production target. The iron in your hand may be slow, but it allows a rhythm you still partly control. Speed is not always mercy when wages are low and expectations have sharpened their teeth. You press a maid's cap. Careful with its frilled border. It must look fresh and neat when worn in the house. A crisp frame for a servant expected to move quietly, answer promptly, and somehow appear unstained while handling fires, coal, trays, dust, children, and other people's impatience. Next comes a petticoat, its starched folds opening beneath the iron with a faint crackling sound. It will add rustle and fullness to a lady's skirt, announcing movement in a whisper of fabric. You think it sounds a little like dry leaves caught in a cupboard, but fashion rarely asks the washhouse for opinions. Iron after iron returns to the stove, grows hot, travels across linen and cools again. The room glows with firelight and pale cloth. Your movements grow quieter, almost automatic. A collar becomes firm, a cuff shines, a napkin takes a square fold so exact it looks offended by curves. Each finished piece is stacked with care, shielded from soot, splash, and careless fingers. Clean laundry is most vulnerable when nearly complete, because disaster has an exquisite sense of timing. At last, you set down another finished shirt, its front lies smooth, its sleeves folded neatly inward, its cuffs sharp enough to satisfy any dining room inspection. The iron rests nearby, still giving off a dull metal heat. Your wrist pulses from its weight. Your shoulders carry the long memory of every stroke beneath your hands. The rich household's linen has become silent and splendid, with every crease corrected, every edge disciplined, and every sign of effort pressed entirely out of sight. A silk gown waits apart from the sturdy whites, draped over the edge of a clean basket as cautiously as a sleeping cat. It does not invite scrubbing. It does not wish to meet boiling water, strong soda, energetic wringing, or any of the firm persuasion that linen can endure. Its folds catch the light with a quiet gleam, a soft brown perhaps, or lavender, or deep fashionable plum, and the whole garment seems to announce that it costs more than your peace of mind. You approach with damp fingers wiped carefully on a clean cloth, because even a trace of grease or rough soap can leave an accusation behind. Fine clothing changes the rules of the washhouse. Heavy white linen can be boiled into submission, but silk, wool, lace, ribbon, velvet trimming, embroidered muslin, dyed cotton, and fragile undergarments demand a slower and more anxious intelligence. You do not begin by attacking dirt. You begin by asking what the fabric will survive. Will the dye run? Will the silk spot? Will the wool shrink or felt? Will the lace tear? Will the embroidery bleed its bright little colours into the pale ground beneath it? The garment lies silent, which is unhelpful. A written care label would be a splendid invention, but apparently the future is hoarding those. You fill a smaller basin with lukewarm water, never fiercely hot. For delicate silk, even water can be risky, especially if dyes are unstable or the finish is easily marked. A gentle soap may be used sparingly. Sometimes such garments are cleaned by careful sponging rather than complete immersion. You test a hidden seam or inner fold, pressing a damp cloth to the colour and looking for signs that the dye means to escape. A faint trace on the cloth makes your heart sink. Rich colours often have independent spirits. They long to travel, usually onto the most visible pale part of a costly dress. A mainstream historical fact rests in your careful handling. Many Victorian garments cannot simply be washed like linen because fabrics such as silk and wool, along with complex dyes and trimmings, may be damaged by heat, alkali, agitation, or soaking. Wealthy wardrobes include elaborate garments constructed with layers, linings, ribbons, lace, boning, padding, fringe, beads, and decorative details that make cleaning complicated. A dress may look like one lovely object in a ballroom mirror, but in your hands it becomes a coalition of materials, each threatening to react differently to water. You support the silk gown as you lift it, never allowing its wet weight to drag against seams. Water darkens the colour at once. You pass it gently through the basin, letting loosened surface dirt drift away without hard rubbing. The fabric has the slippery, delicate feeling of something determined not to forgive you. Silk is strong in some ways, but wet treatment, harsh chemicals, and careless pressure can disturb its sheen or weaken its beauty. A single watermark on the skirt might earn a sharper complaint than all the hours required to avoid it. A lady may forgive a dull conversation at dinner. A blotched silk bodice is another matter entirely. Wool requires its own kind of tact. A shawl, flannel petticoat, knitted stocking, or woolen dress must be cleaned without sudden changes of temperature or violent rubbing, because wool fibres can tighten and mat together. The lovely warm garment may emerge smaller, thicker, and far less useful, transformed into something suitable for an unusually fashionable terrier. You use tepid water and gentle squeezing. You keep the movement restrained. Do not twist. Do not scrub. Do not let irritation become a method. No matter how many garments are waiting nearby with smug folds, lace receives nearly reverent care. A fine lace collar may be laid flat, washed in gentle suds, rinsed quietly, then arranged carefully to keep its pattern. Some pieces are pinned out on cushions or boards to dry in the correct shape. Every little scallop eased into its intended place. You spread a lace cuff with the patience of someone untangling a spiderweb woven by an artist with expensive taste. One snapped thread can spoil the appearance. One pulled loop can expand into a visible flaw. Lace is beautiful partly because it is difficult, which is an explanation society also gives for certain relatives. The wealthy lady's dress may be trimmed with ribbons that cannot be treated like the gown beneath them. A bodice may carry artificial flowers, pleats, beadwork, or fine net that makes complete washing foolish. Spots are treated individually. Dust is brushed away. Greasy marks may be absorbed with powder. Mud is allowed to dry and then carefully removed rather than rubbed deeper into the weave. Cleaning becomes surgery performed on a patient who must attend an evening engagement and has no intention of thanking the surgeon. A quirky tidbit hides inside the rustle of expensive skirts. Victorian women sometimes use dress shields, small removable pads placed beneath the arms of the gowns to protect bodices from perspiration and reduce the need for washing costly clothing. This is perfectly sensible, especially when laundering a fashionable dress risks ruining its fabric, colour, or shape. It also means that an elegant lady may glide through a drawing room supported by tiny hidden barriers against ordinary human dampness. Romance is wonderful, provided it comes with absorbent engineering. You inspect a coloured muslin dress next, printed with small flowers that might fade beneath strong soap. Bran water may be gentler for certain washable coloured cottons, helping preserve a pattern that would suffer under rougher methods. You press rather than rub, keeping the dress moving lightly through the bath. The flowers remain where they belong, which feels like a victory. A floral pattern that migrates into a muddy pink blur is unlikely to delight its owner, unless she's become unexpectedly enthusiastic about modern art several decades too early. Historians still argue whether the complexity of Victorian fashionable clothing chiefly displayed wealth through beauty, or displayed wealth through the enormous hidden labour required to preserve that beauty. A silk gown is expensive when purchased, certainly. It is also expensive every time it must be stored, brushed, altered, repaired, protected from sweat, cleaned of spots, aired, pressed, and guarded against damp, dust, moths, soot, spilled tea, muddy hems, and enthusiastic children. Fine clothing does not merely hang in a wardrobe, it maintains a quiet staff of worries. Not every delicate garment can be restored perfectly. Some colours fade with use, silk grows brittle, trimmings fray, wool suffers from moth damage or careless storage, white lace turns yellow with age. Yet a customer may expect you to reverse time along with soil. You hold an older silk sleeve up to the light and see weakening along the fold. Cleaning may expose what dirt is hidden. The fabric has already begun to fail, but should it split during handling, the blame may drift toward the laundress with the natural grace of smoke finding a ceiling. You lay the rinsed silk flat on clean cloth, smoothing it gently into shape. No harsh wringing, no careless peg biting into the fabric, no soot falling from a smoky line outdoors. The wool rests supported so it does not stretch. The lace lies arranged in its fine pattern, delicate and demanding. Around these quiet garments, the washhouse seems to soften its usual noise, as though even the tubs recognise that one clumsy movement might cost weeks of your earnings. Your hands, roughened by the harsher work, move with surprising delicacy. That is another secret hidden in the rich household's wardrobe. The same fingers expected to scrub heavy linen and haul water must also become feather-light when silk or lace appears. You smooth one final ribbon, watching its colour remain safely in place, and breathe a careful sigh. The garments are not dazzling and stiff like white linen. They are preserved, protected, coaxed safely through danger, for fine fabric. Survival is its own immaculate finish. A green evening dress hangs near the drying space, bright enough to seem almost alive in the grey washhouse. Its colour is not the gentle green of moss or faded ribbon. It is sharp, fashionable, brilliant. The sort of green that turns heads in a ballroom and encourages compliments from people who do not intend to touch it for long. You glance at its folds and feel an uneasiness that has little to do with silk or watermarks. Beauty has become more ambitious in this century. Chemistry has offered richer colours, brighter wallpapers, livelier artificial flowers, and garments that glow under lamplight. Chemistry, unfortunately, has not promised kindness. You do not plunge this dress into any ordinary bath. You brush it cautiously, disturbing as little dust as possible. Fine-coloured particles may loosen from fabric, trimmings, or decorative leaves, and dust is no harmless inconvenience when the pigment contains arsenic. Certain brilliant green pigments used in the 19th century, including Scheele's green and emerald green, are made with arsenic compounds. They appear in fabrics, artificial flowers, wallpaper, confectionery decorations, toys, paints, and fashionable ornaments. Green has always been pleasing to the eye. The Victorian age simply finds a way to make admiring it rather more medically complicated. A mainstream historical fact rests in the folds of the gown. Arsenical green pigments become notorious during the 19th century because they can expose makers, wearers, decorators, and household workers to poison through dust, handling, and contaminated surroundings. Reports emerge of artificial flower makers suffering sores and illness while working with vivid green leaves. Concern spreads about green dresses, green gloves, green wreaths, green wallpapers, and green rooms. Fashion has managed something genuinely impressive. It has made a garden colour feel like a warning. You hold the garment away from your apron. There may be no dramatic cloud rising from it, no theatrical hiss, no convenient skull stitched into the hem. The danger is smaller and quieter. Powder settles on fingers. Dust shakes loose in handling. Dampness may disturb dye or finish. A worker who cleans, brushes, repairs, presses, packs, or carries such objects may take in the risk without ever being counted among the elegant people who purchased the colour. The rich lady receives the effect. You receive the residue. It is a very efficient distribution of glamour. The gown may not be entirely green. Perhaps it is cream silk decorated with green artificial leaves at the neckline and sleeves. Perhaps a sash gleams in a poisonous shade. Perhaps only its trim contains the troubling pigment, making the risk easy to overlook. You examine it under weak light, careful not to rub the surface harshly. A soft brush may remove dust, but brushing can send particles upward. A damp cloth might catch some dirt, but moisture can alter the finish or cause staining. There is no simple act of cleaning when the dirt and the beauty may be tangled together. Fashionable colours multiply during the century as new chemical dyes appear, especially after the discovery of the first successful synthetic aniline dye in 1856. Mauves, purples, magentas, blues, and rich new tones delight consumers eager for novelty. Not every bright Victorian dye is arsenical, and not every vivid garment is a secret poison trap. Yet chemical innovation runs ahead of worker protection. A colour can be sold because it is stunning long before everyone agrees about what breathing it, wearing it, or washing it may do. This is a familiar arrangement in human life. First comes the exciting new product, then comes the coughing. You touch the dress only where necessary, your fingers already vulnerable through small cracks and roughness. Poison does not need a grand invitation when skin is broken. It needs opportunity. You think of women making decorative wreaths and sprays for hats, fingers dusted with green pigment as they bind leaves and petals into fashionable little arrangements. A lady wears a leafy ornament for an afternoon. A maker may handle hundreds. The same pattern governs the laundry room. One gown passes through the wearer's evening. It lingers in your working air as an object requiring attention. A quirky tidbit clings to the bright trim. Public anxiety over arsenic green grows so recognisable that cartoons and satirical prints portray fashionable ladies accompanied by deathly imagery. Mocking dresses and accessories beautiful enough to poison admirers. The joke is dark, but understandable. A colour marketed as fresh, natural, and lively becomes associated with illness and decay. Nothing spoils a graceful entrance quite like the suspicion that one's bonnet decoration has the occupational manners of rat poison. Green is not the only concern. Fabric finishes. Mordants used to fix dyes, cleaning fluids, stain treatments, metallic compounds, and dust from workshops can all burden workers in poorly ventilated spaces. Some dark dyes irritate skin. Certain reds, yellows, and purples can rely on chemicals whose effects are not gently managed. Heavy garments gather grime along their hems from streets where soot, mud, horse waste, factory dust, and spilled refuse mingle freely. To restore a rich garment, you may meet substances collected from dye house, drawing room, pavement, carriage, dining table, and human skin, all in one damp bundle. A dress can have a remarkably full social life. You lay the green gown on a clean surface and begin a cautious inspection of the hem. Street dirt darkens the lower edge. Mud must dry enough to lift away carefully. Rubbing wet grime into the fabric could spread marks and disturb the colour. You use gentle movements, easing away what can be removed without releasing more pigment than necessary. The hem passes slowly through your fingers. Brilliant green above, city brown below, and your own pale skin between them. A complete portrait of Victorian elegance could hardly be arranged more honestly. Historians still argue whether public fears surrounding arsenic fashion led quickly enough to meaningful consumer change, or whether bright colour and commercial profit allowed dangerous goods to remain attractive despite repeated warnings. Some customers avoid suspect greens. Some manufacturers advertise safer alternatives. Some people continue buying the shades they admire, because danger is inconvenient when it clashes with taste. A richly coloured gown can speak louder than a medical warning, especially when the suffering tends to occur in the workshops and laundries rather than under chandeliers. The dress must be stored or returned without crushing its decoration. You wrap it lightly in clean cloth, controlling the fold so its trim does not scrape against other garments. The bundle is almost lovely, quiet and smooth on the table. No one seeing it prepared for delivery would guess at the nervous care it demands. No one would detect poison through its folded elegance. It looks like luxury carefully protected from harm, which is true in one direction only. Your throat feels dry, though perhaps from heat, perhaps from coal smoke, perhaps from the sharp memory of all the substances floating through this work. The green fabric remains dazzling, its brightness undiminished by your suspicion. That may be the cruelest part. Dangerous things ought to look tired, blotched, or unappealing. They ought to announce themselves with ugly edges and dreadful taste. Instead, this gown glows with the colour of spring leaves, garden paths, and shaded lawns. You lift the wrapped garment into its basket, keeping it separate from the pale linen, and the poisonous green disappears beneath clean cloth, still beautiful, still desired, still waiting for hands like yours to make it presentable. A knock sounds at the narrow door while you are tying clean cloth around a parcel, and when you open it, another woman stands outside with a basket against her hip. She's not bringing a rich household's garments. She's bringing herself, or rather, the possibility of her labour. Her cheeks are pinched by cold, her boots dark from wet streets, and a child clings to one side of her skirt with the solemn patience of someone already familiar with waiting. She asks whether there is washing to share. Carrying, mangling, drying, folding, anything at all. Work attracts more women because need is never in short supply. You know her story without needing the details. Perhaps her husband's wages disappear into irregular employment, drink, illness, injury, or simple insufficiency. Perhaps she is widowed, deserted, unmarried, or married to a man whose earnings cannot feed the mouths gathered under one roof. Perhaps she has children too young to leave alone and hopes to take in washing at home, where work and childcare can occupy the same cramped room, and both can become equally impossible. Her situation is not unusual. It is a pattern stitched across towns, courts, alleys, villages, and smoky industrial neighbourhoods. A mainstream historical fact stands at the doorway beside her. Laundressing is one of the most common forms of paid labour available to poorer Victorian women, especially married women, widows, and women needing work they can sometimes perform from home. Domestic service may require living in another household and surrendering much control over time. Factory work may demand fixed hours away from children. Sewing is poorly paid and strains the eyes in dim rooms. Taking in washing seems accessible because a woman may already know the methods and may possess, or borrow, some basic equipment. Accessible, however, does not mean easy, profitable, safe, or merciful. You shift the basket from your hip and invite her inside for a moment of warmth that is mostly steam. The child stares at the hanging linen as though it might be a ghostly forest. His mother looks toward the tubs, the coals, the dripping boards, the stacks awaiting delivery. Her gaze measures not merely work, but bread, coal, rent, boots, medicine, and the delicate arithmetic of keeping a household from slipping under. A pile of shirts is not romantic, yet it can become supper. A basket of sheets may become fuel. A tray cloth, properly finished, may mean the difference between paying a lodging debt and meeting the landlord's disappointed eyebrows. Payment is rarely generous. A laundress may be paid by the piece, by the dozen, by the basket, or by arrangement with regular customers. Out of what she earns, she may have to provide soap, soda, glue, starch, fuel, water, drying space, equipment, and transport. The customer sees a charge for clean linen. You see the coal burning beneath the boiler and calculate how much profit has already gone up the chimney. The sheets are not simply washed. They consume supplies with the appetite of visiting cousins. At least cousins occasionally bring news. When work is done in a woman's dwelling, every inch becomes valuable. A small kitchen holds a copper or tub, damp clothes, a stove, a meal pot, perhaps a cradle, perhaps beds crowded close, perhaps a husband returning from labour wanting warmth and food where only steam and wet fabric remain. Lines stretch overhead, sheets block light, floors stay damp, children move around boiling water and heavy irons. A baby may cry while both hands are deep in suds. The home is said to be a woman's sanctuary, which sounds lovely until the sanctuary contains 6 steaming pillowcases and nowhere dry to sit. You see women carrying bundles through streets with their bodies bent slightly forward, arms braced around the weight, Some collect washing from households, some receive customers at their rooms, some work for established laundresses who can secure larger accounts. Some serve hotels, schools, hospitals, boarding houses, military establishments, or affluent families. Their status varies, but the work clings to the same assumptions. Washing is women's task because dirt from daily life is imagined as domestic, and domestic duty is imagined as natural rather than skilled. Apparently, the moment work requires strength, judgment, heat, chemistry, endurance, and accurate counting, it becomes most natural to pay very little for it. A laundress carries a reputation problem along with the bundle, because she moves between poorer districts and wealthier doors, works without the direct supervision expected in domestic service, and may appear in public streets with parcels. Polite commentators sometimes regard her as rough, unreliable, drink-prone, or morally suspect. It is a convenient suspicion. A woman exhausted by hauling soaked sheets may not look suitably delicate. A woman handling gentlemen's underlinen is close to intimate evidence without belonging to the respectable household that produced it. Society creates hard work, underpays the worker, then wrinkles its nose when she does not emerge looking like a watercolour angel. A quirky tidbit appears in the language used about the trade. In many communities, the familiar washerwoman becomes such a recognisable street and neighbourhood figure that her broad hat, rolled sleeves, heavy basket, and vigorous opinions become stock features in songs, prints, comic scenes, and theatrical characters. She is made funny because she is strong, loud, and practical. Yet her strength is not a costume when a wet bundle must cross a street in winter rain. Her loud voice may be the only instrument available for demanding overdue payment. Comedy likes borrowing women's survival skills and calling them personality. You and the visiting woman speak quietly about customers. One pays promptly, but sends lace that makes the heart tremble. Another sends great loads and counts every napkin as though linen were crown jewels. One house insists on snowy shirts, but offers a rate that barely covers coal. A boarding establishment has steady volume, though every sheet seems to be the size and weight of a maritime sail. Names are exchanged with caution. Good customer matters, and unfair customer matters too. In a less cheerful manner, information passes from worker to worker, because there are few formal protections and even fewer gentlemen rushing in to make certain laundresses are treated justly. Historians still argue whether home laundressing gave Victorian women a valuable measure of economic agency, or whether it kept them trapped in an extension of unpaid domestic labour, now performed for strangers under exhausting commercial pressure. You can feel both truths in the room. Money earned by your own hands matters. It buys decisions, however small. It may keep children fed or give a widow a room of her own. Yet earning it means turning skin, breath, sleep, and living space into tools of production. Independence sounds grand in speeches. Here it arrives damp, paid by the bundle, and due again at dawn. The child reaches toward a folded towel, then pulls back when his mother gently catches his wrist. The towel must remain clean. Even a small handprint can reopen labour that has only just been closed. You find a modest share of plain washing that might be given to her. Work sturdy enough not to risk an impossible loss if her first attempt for this customer goes poorly. She thanks you without ceremony. There is no room for delicate pride when food is required. She gathers the bundle, heavier now, and settles it into the crook of one arm while her child takes the other hand. At the doorway, cool air slides across the wet floor. She steps out under the grey sky, carrying other people's linen toward her own crowded room, where steam will rise around a kettle, a child, a drying line, and whatever supper can be managed beside the washing. You watch her disappear between passing carts and damp walls. Then you turn inward again. Around you, the baskets wait with patient authority, each one filled with cloth, income, fatigue, and the narrow choices permitted to women whose hands are expected to keep the whole respectable world clean. The next basket does not lead you toward a cramped kitchen or a yard strung with personal lines. It leads you into a larger establishment, Where the doorway opens upon a room alive with movement, the air still carries damp cloth, hot metal, soap, and coal. But the scale has changed. Tubs stand in groups, boilers rise larger and more commanding, lines of women bend, lift, carry, feed, pull, sort, and fold. Linen does not arrive as the intimate evidence of one household. It arrives by the cartload from hotels, hospitals, schools, lodging houses, restaurants, clubs, and families wealthy enough to produce an astonishing amount of fabric in need of obedience. You step inside with your sleeves rolled and your apron tied firmly, joining a stream of workers whose names are less important to the manager than the number of pieces finished. The noise presses around you. Water splashes into vats. Wooden carts knock over uneven boards. Ironing tables thump beneath repeated strokes. A machine turns with a wet, grinding rhythm, making cloth move faster than any pair of hands can manage alone. The private washhouse has become an industry. And industry has a fondness for measuring everything except how tired you feel. A mainstream historical fact rolls steadily across the room. Commercial laundries expand during the 19th century as towns grow. Institutions multiply. Hotels serve more travellers. Hospitals require large amounts of linen, and middle-class households increasingly send washing outside the home. Steam power and mechanical equipment begin transforming parts of the trade. Washing machines, wringers, mangles, drying apparatus, and large ironing equipment promise speed and volume. The laundry no longer needs to fit into a back room. It can occupy a building, hire many workers, and consume linen with the appetite of a very clean dragon. You are placed beside a wringing machine, where soaked fabric is fed between rollers to force out water. At first sight, it seems merciful. No twisting sheets with aching hands. No two women pulling opposite corners until their shoulders protest. The rollers grip a wet cloth and draw it through, pressing out streams that fall beneath in a steady rush. A sheet emerges flatter, lighter, and ready for drying with astonishing speed. Your wrists are grateful for approximately half a minute. Then you notice how close your fingers must come to the turning rollers. You feed an edge forward and release at the right moment. The machine takes the linen eagerly. It does not know the difference between a sheet corner and a sleeve cuff, between a pillowcase and a human hand. Safety guards are limited, absent, or considered less urgent than output. A moment of distraction can pull fingers into danger. Long hair, loose clothing, or a tired movement may turn useful equipment into a trap. Machines do not become cruel. They simply continue doing exactly what they are built to do, which is sometimes worse. The room has supervisors now. A woman with a brisk face moves between stations, checking bundles and urging the pace. A man near the office keeps accounts, receives customers, negotiates contracts, and somehow remains notably drier than everyone else. Progress has arranged itself with beautiful clarity. Women stand near boiling water and moving rollers. Management stands near paper. It is almost as though dryness itself has been promoted. You guide table linen through the wringer and watch water stream away. On another side of the room, a rotary washing machine turns linen in hot suds. It may be hand-cranked, driven by belt and shafting, or powered in a larger steam laundry. Instead of clothing being rubbed piece by piece, batches tumble or churn in enclosed drums or wooden cylinders. The method increases capacity, which customers welcome immediately. The expected quantity of finished work rises to match it, which workers discover immediately. Every labour-saving device appears to possess the remarkable power of saving labour from remaining at a reasonable amount. A cart rolls past carrying hospital sheets. They are plain, practical, and numerous, marked for identification and separated with more caution than ordinary household linen. Institutions need regular supplies of clean bedding, towels, gowns, bandages, and cloths. The work has a sanitary purpose that matters deeply, even when understanding of infection develops unevenly. In a hospital laundry, dirty linen can bring more than dust and perspiration. It may carry bodily soil and illness into the hands and breathing space of women expected to handle it efficiently. Clean sheets comfort the sick. The people cleaning them rarely receive the same tender attention. Hotels send their own tidal wave. Sheets, pillowcases, towels, tablecloths, napkins, servants' linen, and kitchen cloths fill hampers day after day. Travellers demand clean rooms without contemplating where all that whiteness travels once they depart. You lift a hotel sheet and wonder how many sleepers it has hosted, how many breakfast trays have stained its companions, how many guests have rung for fresh towels with the serene conviction that towels grow pressed and folded in cupboards by natural causes. A quirky tidbit spins beside the machinery. Large laundries sometimes mark number or track pieces with systems elaborate enough to rival a small library, because customers become extremely interested in order when the missing object is their own monogrammed pillowcase. Laundry marks may be stamped, stitched, inked, or recorded on lists, ensuring that an institution's linen returns to the correct pile. Somewhere, a clerk may spend part of the day pursuing the identity of a wandering napkin. It is not heroic work, but neither is losing 300 matching towels and attempting to look calm. You move to a mangle, where flat linen passes between rollers to smooth it. Sheets and tablecloths benefit from the broad, even pressure, emerging flatter and more orderly than hand handling alone can easily achieve. The rollers turn steadily, requiring feeding, receiving, folding, stacking, and feeding again. Your eyes fix upon cloth edges. Your hands develop a careful timing. Damp heat rises around the machine. Nearby, steam pipes and drying rooms add their warmth. The laundry is no longer simply humid. It feels as though an entire rainy summer has been trapped indoors and instructed to meet a production schedule. Some workers specialise. One sorts incoming loads, another washes, another tends the boiling, another works the wringer. Ironers stand at tables or handle heated pressing machinery. Folders create tidy stacks, packers assemble orders, delivery carts bring fresh dirt and carry away finished brightness. The division of labour builds speed, but it narrows your world to one repeated action. You may pass hundreds of sheets through rollers without ever seeing the polished bed upon which one settles. You may press shirt fronts all day without knowing a single gentleman's name, which is possibly the one benefit management forgot to advertise. Historians still argue whether commercial laundries offer women safer and more regular employment than exhausting home washing, or whether they replace one form of hardship with strict discipline, dangerous machinery, intense heat, and faster demands. Wages may become steadier. Equipment may lessen certain heavy motions. Work may be found among other women instead of alone in a crowded dwelling. Yet factory rules control the clock. Machines set the rhythm, and an injured hand can mean lost earning power with very little ceremony. A worker is valued for keeping pace until the moment she cannot. You stack smooth hotel napkins into a square white tower, each one nearly identical, each one destined for a table where a diner may dab at a mouth and never suspect the mechanical thunder behind such neatness. All around you, belts turn, rollers press, carts creak, and steam rises through brightened air. The laundry has grown larger, faster, and more modern. It sends out more whiteness than any solitary pair of hands could manage. Yet your shoulders still tighten, your skin still dries, your lungs still draw in warm chemical damp, and your fingers still hover near danger with every obedient sheet. A cough travels through the laundry room with greater freedom than any worker possesses. It begins near the drying racks, moves through the steam, and answers itself beside the folding table. Nobody pauses for long. A woman turns her head into her shoulder, coughs twice, then reaches for another sheet. Another keeps one wrist wrapped in a strip of cloth darkened by damp. One walks with a slight tilt, protecting a sore hip or a back that no longer straightens without argument. The clean linen rises in neat piles while the women around it show every sign of wear that cloth is never permitted to reveal. Your own hands tell the day more clearly than any clock. The skin around the nails is swollen and tender. Cracks cross your knuckles in thin, bright lines. A sore place beneath one finger catches painfully whenever damp fabric drags across it. Soap has taken the softness. Heat has taken the comfort. Cold, rinsing water has taken whatever piece the heat forgot to remove. You flex your hands, then hide the gesture by reaching for another towel. Customers prefer not to imagine that their household purity has been handled by fingers resembling small, irritated roots. A mainstream historical fact rests in the bodies gathered near the work tables. 19th century laundresses often experience chronic skin irritation, rheumatic pain, strained backs, respiratory trouble, burns, exhaustion, and illness worsened by long hours in damp, overheated, poorly ventilated spaces. Medical observers and social investigators describe laundry work as physically severe, especially for women handling heavy wet fabric and moving repeatedly between heat, steam, cold air, and chemical mixtures. The bodies made to live in weather no season would design naturally. Tropical beside the boiler, riverbank at the tub, winter at the delivery door. You lift a basket from the floor and feel a slow pull across your lower back. Not a sharp injury, not enough to stop working, only a deep warning that has learned it will be ignored. Wet linen weighs brutally, and the bending begins early, repeating so often that no single movement receives blame. Lift from tub, carry to wringer, lift from wringer, carry to line or drying room, carry down again, fold, pack, deliver. A woman may ruin her back so gradually that nobody can point to the precise moment it happened, which is very useful for employers and very inconvenient for the spine. Your chest carries its own record. Steam does not float alone. It gathers soap mist, coal smoke, bleaching fumes, dust shaken from garments, dried starch, and whatever illness clings to soiled linen. A window may open, but opening a window in a soot-darkened city can feel like choosing which sort of unhelpful air you prefer. You breathe shallowly when the room grows sharp. At night, the cough may settle in, dry and persistent, keeping time beside the bed. In the morning, you rise again because the cough contributes nothing toward rent. Its failure to become financially useful is frankly disappointing. Near the receiving area, a basket arrives from a lodging house where fever has passed through several rooms. The linen is bundled tightly, but not tightly enough to make it harmless. Sheets from sickness carry fear as much as soil. By the later 19th century, understanding of germs and disinfection becomes more influential, though practical safeguards remain uneven and workers are not always protected adequately. Linen may be boiled or treated with disinfectants, but someone must first open the bundle, separate the pieces, and breathe in the closeness of the sick room. You do this without a mask, without gloves, and without the luxury of announcing that contagious bedding is not in your preferred duties. There is an unpleasant unfairness in the language used around illness. When a respectable household suffers sickness, it is a tragedy deserving sympathy, soup, quiet voices, and carefully washed bedding. When a laundress becomes ill, her illness may be described as weakness, carelessness, poor habits, or an unfortunate tendency to neglect cleanliness. The woman who handles dirty linen for a living can be blamed for looking worn by dirt, damp, and work. It is rather like hiring someone to sweep chimneys and then expressing surprise that soot has failed to improve her complexion. The suspicion reaches beyond illness. Washerwomen are often imagined as noisy, coarse, careless, and overly fond of drink. Certainly some workers drink, as some clerks, gentlemen, sailors, cooks, widows, bishops, and probably very frustrated house cats would do if given the means. But public judgment attaches itself particularly firmly to poor women whose labour is visible, wet, physical, and performed outside refined supervision. If you speak loudly, you are vulgar. If you demand payment, You are troublesome. If exhaustion bends your posture, you are slovenly. If you arrive clean, someone may decide you cannot have worked very hard. Respectability offers a delightful game in which you are permitted to lose in several costumes. A quirky tidbit follows the talk of washerwomen and reputation. Public laundry baths and washhouses, created in many British towns during the 19th century, are promoted partly as improvements for cleanliness and public health. But they also become social spaces where women exchange news, advice, arguments, jokes, and local intelligence over steaming tubs. Officials may imagine rows of grateful, silent women becoming morally improved by proper facilities. Instead, the washhouse fills with conversation. This is only shocking if one assumes women presented with hot water and one another will suddenly lose all interest in discussing the neighbours. At a bench near the door, a younger worker presses her palm against her wrist. She has been twisting smaller garments and feeding larger pieces through equipment for hours, and the joint feels weak. She tries to laugh it off, saying her hand has grown lazy. Nobody believes her, but everyone understands the performance. Admitting pain too plainly can cost shifts. Showing illness can cause customers to seek another laundress, as though one catches fatigue from a returned pillowcase. Working women learn to disguise damage with the same skill used to disguise yellow in linen. A touch of cheerfulness covers a great deal, provided nobody examines it in strong light. Historians still argue whether reformers who investigated women's industrial labour genuinely improved laundresses' lives, or whether their concern remained tangled with moral judgment about poor women's homes, drinking, speech, motherhood, and respectability. Reports can expose long hours, dangerous heat, low wages, harmful machinery, and sickening conditions. Laws and inspections can slowly force change. Yet the investigating eye may look at a steaming laundry and see disorderly women before it sees skilled workers made ill by necessary labour. Help is a fine thing. Being helped while scolded is less refreshing. You gather a stack of folded sheets against your apron. They smell faintly of cleanliness. A calm, dry scent that gives no clue about fever linen, fumes, sore joints, or coughing workers. Each folded edge is exact. Each surface is pale and smooth. You place the stack into a basket lined with clean cloth, careful not to smudge it with the bloodless cracks along your fingers. Somewhere, these sheets will be opened upon a bed and praised for their freshness. The cough sounds again behind you, then fades beneath the clatter and hiss of labour. Your shoulders ache. Your palms burn gently. Still, the basket must be packed, the account marked, the linen guarded from soot and rain. Cleanliness has its public face, cool and white and perfectly folded. You stand in its shadow, warm with steam, roughened by chemicals, carrying the private marks of everything the finished cloth has been made to forget. The final basket waits near the door, lined with clean cloth and filled with the rich household's restored world. Sheets lie folded in broad squares. Pillowcases sit in pairs. Shirts are stacked with smooth fronts turned upward, collars and cuffs bundled separately, each one stiff, bright, and stern as a tiny magistrate. Napkins are counted twice. Tablecloths rest beneath a protective wrapper. The delicate pieces are tucked apart, guarded from rougher linen and from any speck of soot that might descend at the last moment like a villain in a cheap theatre scene. You check the list with slow care. 1 large tablecloth, 12 dinner napkins, 4 breakfast cloths, 6 shirts, 8 collars, 8 pairs of cuffs, 2 nightgowns, 1 muslin wrapper, several towels, lace pieces wrapped separately. The green-trimmed dress, secure beneath its cloth, receives a glance but no unnecessary touch. Every piece must match the record, because the return is where invisible labour becomes visible, only if something is missing. A flawless order passes through the door with a little comment. A lost handkerchief can become the subject of household tragedy. A mainstream historical fact rests in this final counting. Victorian households often mark and inventory linen carefully because cloth is valuable, and laundry sent out must be tracked to prevent loss, mix-ups, or theft. Initials, numbers, stitched marks, ink stamps, and household books help identify pieces. A large home may own impressive quantities of linen, managed by a housekeeper with great seriousness. Linen cupboards are not casual storage. They are archives of domestic status, where folded cloth testifies to wealth, order, and the ability to keep life looking fresh. You cover the basket and lift. Even clean dry laundry has weight, though it feels lighter than the soaked beast it once became in the tubs. Your arms settle beneath it. The handle presses into your palm. The door opens to evening air, cooler than the washhouse, carrying damp stone, horse traffic, chimney smoke, and the faint smell of rain not yet falling. The sky has gone pewter. Windows glow along the street. You step out carefully, because a stumble now would be a tragedy so obvious that even the napkins might laugh. The route to the rich household passes through a changing city. Carts rattle over stones. A cab horse stamps near the curb. Shop shutters begin to close. A boy carries newspapers beneath one arm, calling headlines into the dusk. Gas lamps shimmer to life one by one, soft yellow beads in the smoky air. In the later Victorian period, gaslighting has become common in many urban streets and homes, lengthening the hours of work, shopping, reading, dining, and being disappointed by the weather. Progress glows warmly overhead while you carry laundry through mud. Progress has a sense of humour, though not a generous one. The basket must remain dry. You hold its cloth cover tight when a mist of rain begins, fine as breath. A splash from a cartwheel darkens the street beside your boot, missing the linen by inches. Your heart gives a small leap, because a stain now would undo too much. You angle your body between the basket and the road, offering your skirt to the mud instead. Very noble, if anyone wishes to commission a statue of a woman shielding napkins from a carriage puddle. Marble might not capture the smell. At the servants' entrance of the wealthy house, you pause and knock. The front door, polished and imposing, belongs to callers, doctors, guests, tradesmen of high enough rank, and people whose gloves remain mostly decorative. You belong at the side or back, where deliveries, coal, food, ashes, laundry, and labour move through the hidden veins of the home. The door opens to a maid with tired eyes and a clean cap. She recognises the basket before she recognises you, which is fair enough. The basket is the celebrated guest. Inside, warmth touches your face. The passage smells of beeswax, coal fire, cooking, floor polish, and flowers somewhere beyond reach. The household seems calm in the way a stage set seems calm when one does not look behind it. You carry the basket to the proper room or hand it over to the servant responsible for receiving it. The cloth cover is lifted. The first inspection begins. A pillowcase is unfolded, then refolded. A shirt front is examined for smoothness. Collars are checked for stiffness and count. Napkins are separated and ticked against the list. You stand quietly while other hands judge your hours. This is one of the strangest sensations in service work. To watch someone inspect the visible result of an effort they cannot fully imagine. The maid may understand more than her mistress, because servants know hidden labour when they see it. Yet even she must protect the household standards. If a collar is limp, she will hear about it. If a tablecloth is missing, the housekeeper will ask questions. The chain of expectation descends from drawing room to linen cupboard to washhouse, link by link, until it reaches your hands. A quirky tidbit belongs to the linen cupboard itself. In some large homes, fresh linen is aired and stored with lavender, orris root, dried rose leaves, or other scented additions to discourage mustiness and lend a gentle fragrance. The result is that a guest may sink into bed smelling faintly of flowers, never knowing that the sheet's earlier perfume was steam, soda, bleach, sweat, coal smoke, and the determined anxiety of timely delivery. Lavender gets the final credit. Lavender has excellent public relations. Payment may come in coins, in an account settled later, or in a promise that must be believed because refusing it risks future work. You receive what is due, or what the household considers due, and tuck it safely away. The amount feels small against the length of the labour. It always does. Still, the coins matter. They are coal, bread, rent, soap for the next work. Perhaps tea if fortune is feeling sentimental. The rich household purchases clean linen. You purchase another chance to continue. Historians still argue whether the late Victorian cult of domestic comfort made homes genuinely more pleasant and sanitary, or whether it deepened dependence on hidden female labour, while calling the result natural refinement. Standing near the servant's passage, you see the answer folded in the basket. Comfort is real. Clean sheets do ease the body. Fresh shirts do protect dignity. Well-washed linens do matter to health, warmth, and daily order. But comfort is not conjured from ideals. It is carried through back doors by people whose names rarely appear in family histories. The housekeeper gives a final nod. The linen is accepted. The household stains have been erased. Its cuffs stiffened. Its table prepared for another round of civilized display. You step back into the evening with the empty basket lighter against your side. Empty does not mean weightless. It holds the memory of wet sheets, fumes, sore fingers, counted napkins, dangerous dyes, and the long path from dirty bundle to spotless cupboard. Outside, the rain has thinned. Gaslight trembles on wet stones. Behind curtained windows, someone may soon dress for dinner in a shirt you pressed, sit at a table beneath linen you blued, or sleep on sheets you boiled and rinsed until they shone. You pass along the street unnoticed, which is almost the signature of work done well. The rich family's world glows clean behind you, bright and folded, while you carry away the ache, the damp, and the quiet knowledge of what whiteness costs. The street softens as you walk on, and the sounds begin to loosen from their sharp edges. Hooves grow distant, wheels fade into a low murmur, rain beads along the rim of the empty basket and slips away one drop at a time. Your hands rest for a little while, no longer gripping wet linen, no longer testing heat, no longer coaxing cloth into brightness. They are simply hands, tired and tender, held close against the evening. A small light glows in a window ahead. Somewhere, a kettle settles on a hob. Somewhere, a folded sheet waits in a cupboard, lavender-scented and still. The city keeps breathing smoke and mist, but the pace around you slows, as if even the stones are ready to sleep. The long labour of the day has passed into quiet objects, a collar, a napkin, a pillowcase, a tablecloth lying smooth in the dark. You do not need to carry the whole weight now. The tubs are still, the irons cool, the starch pan is empty, the sharp fumes thin into memory, the linen has gone where it was meant to go, and you are allowed, at last, to step away from its demands. Not forever, not grandly, just for this soft little pocket of night. You breathe in gently, you breathe out slowly. The rain becomes a whisper against the roofs. The lamps blur into warm halos. The clean white cloth behind the windows no longer asks anything of you. It simply rests, folded and quiet, while the city settles under its smoky blanket. And you, too, may rest now. Let the basket grow light. Let the street grow dim. Let the last pale sheet in your mind drift down, smooth and cool, until every corner is tucked, every sound is distant, and everything fades softly into sleep. End of script. Sweet dreams.